Hello, my name is Rachel Norris. I have chosen a historical figure who was born on September 13th, 1857 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and would soon grow and have the largest chocolate factory in the world. We see his name in stores, ads, maybe even your secret stash. Ah, yes, the man I'm talking about is Milton S. Hershey. The biography that I chose is Milton S. Hershey's Extraordinary Life of Wealth, Empire, and Utopian Dreams by Michael D'Antonio, and includes a notes of sources and an index on the back. Henry's parents were named Henry Hershey and Fanny Snavely. They were both in the Mennonite faith, but Henry left it, eventually taking Fanny along with him, even though Fanny's father was actually a bishop of one of the Mennonite churches. The two lovebirds got married in the Holy Trinity Lutheran Church and began their life together, soon bearing Milton S. Hershey. Well, I say they're lovebirds, but they ended up getting a divorce when Milton was a boy. Some other conflicts include Milton having to move with his family quite frequently due to Henry's work and the loss of Fanny and Henry's 4-year-old daughter, Serena. Milton was just 8 years old when she passed. When Milton was 15 years old, he began working at Joseph C. Royer's ice cream parlor and garden. In the book I read, it says Joseph C. Royer was able to teach Milton much of what he knew, and the boy became both reliable and competent. He soaked in his employer's always please the customer philosophy and learned about buying ingredients, managing inventory, pricing goods, and handling employees. And that was on page 29. At age 18, he borrowed money from his Aunt Mattie and started his own confectionery store called the Spring Garden Shop. He spent many hours working and little hours resting. His Aunt Mattie and Fanny both helped him make and wrap candies to sell. It was at this shop where Milton came up with his own delicious caramel, however you say it, recipe. This shop thrived for a while, but when he started running out of money, he was frequently writing his uncle to beg for more money to keep the shop open. When he was 24, his uncle stopped sending him money, and he was left with the failing business. So he moved to Colorado, which is where his dad was working at the time. There, he worked for a confectioner, and the book says the store's specialty was caramels, but instead of using paraffin to give the candy chew, the confectioner used milk which was blended with vanilla and sugar. As the mixture was heated, the water in the milk evaporated and the natural bacteria was killed. After cooling, he had a softer, smoother, sweeter candy that could be kept on shelves for many weeks without spoiling, and that's on page 45. In hopes of starting a new business with this recipe he learned in Colorado, he moved to New York and sold candies in his new shop. His business was successful, but his dad came and told him to sell his cough drops. Milton ended up going into debt because of the equipment he had to buy to make Henry's unsuccessful cough drops. Once again, business failed and he moved back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In 1894, Milton's old friend Harry Lebkecker helped him start up the Lancaster Caramel Company. It was extremely successful and he had about 1,300 employees eventually, but he got bored with caramel. A quote from Hershey reads, "The caramel business is a fad. It is not a staple business, but chocolate is something we will always have." Page 69. In 1894, Milton had all the machinery needed to start making chocolate in his factory. This was a huge deal because chocolate was a luxury in those days. Usually it was only the high class that bought chocolate. However, he made it more affordable for people. He started selling the solid chocolate candy bars with his name on them in 1896. Eventually, he'd come to have about 114 chocolate items. Chocolate wasn't the only good thing in his life. He found a pretty girl named Catherine when he was 40 years old. She was 25. Sugar daddy. Okay, so that's what it means. Got it. Catherine loved theater and playing the piano. Her family said she was not a woman to be bored, on page 80. Everyone called her Kitty. The two got married just a year after they had met on May 25, 1898. The only people who attended were the priest and the two witnesses at the St. Patrick Cathedral. Together, Kitty and Milton Hershey built a home on the property of the chocolate factory. Though it was a beautiful home, it wasn't anything near as lavish as what other millionaire houses looked like. He built a town around the chocolate factory called Hershey. He had built about 180 homes and paved the roads and had trolley cars, a medical center, a shop, a hotel, a golf course, and even sports fields. The street lights had Hershey kisses on them as well. He said on page 164, "Forget the profits. I don't want to lose much either, but I want the store to help my people." His generosity didn't stop there. He eventually made an orphan home for boys, hired more people instead of firing people during the Great Depression, and he made these high-energy bars for the soldiers during World War II. Some more successes include the Hershey amusement park being built in 1909, the establishment of the open-air theater in 1911, and the Utopia in Cuba that he built. On page 242, it says that in 1947, sales reached a peak of 121 million, and Hershey made 90% of the milk chocolate produced in America. I wanted to include some interesting facts as well. For instance, on page 184, the book talks about how the Mr. Goodbar got its name. Here's a clip of how the conversation might have gone down between Hershey and one of his workers. That's a good bar. Mr. Goodbar? Well, actually, sir, I said, I really like that name. Yeah, let's keep it. Boys, put it on the wrappers. You just earned yourself a raise. On page 245, it talks about how a Hollywood filmmaker asked Mars, the company that makes M&Ms, if they can use their M&Ms in the movie for a couple of scenes. Mars turned them down because they thought the movie would be a flop. So the filmmaker asked Hershey if they could use their Reese's Pieces instead. Well, Reese's Pieces sales ended up tripling because that movie that Mars turned down was Steven Spielberg's E.T. The most shocking fact of all is on page 142. Milton Hershey had tickets to go on the Titanic's first voyage in 1912, but he ended up not going because of a business trip he had to go on. We should remember Hershey, not only because of his legendary stories and his school that has been around for a century now, and his delicious chocolate that we still enjoy today, but because of what a difference he made in people's lives. He was a fine example of a selfless, humble man. He started with nothing, worked extremely hard, and then shared his wealth with everyone. We should all strive for success like he did.